Hello and welcome to DUI's first impressions and analysis banner review for June Flash Gala 2024. So this banner, we got two big characters related to the current anniversary rerun event. We got, of course, Orologia, and we got Nectar as well. June typically has a grand that's related to the anniversary, so this is no surprise to us, especially with all the Granblue TV appearances with Orologia. But still seeing them here makes me very, very happy because I, for one, am a big Orologia fan. So let's talk about the characters first. I'm going to start with Nectar because Orologia, there's a lot of things to go through, so we'll get the easy one, quote unquote, out of the way first. Nectar is an attacker for water, and basically he functions around these three linked skills. So if you don't know how linked skills work, essentially when you click one, all of them go on cooldown. So when you click K9 slash, this one and this one, both go on cooldown. However, there is a mechanic to sort of bypass this. So every time Nectar uses a skill, his purge level rises by 1. And when purge level is 1, upon using a link skill, it activates another one. And then if your level is 2, then it activates all the other ones. So basically what this means is that the first time you cast the skills, you can only click one once. So let's say on the turn 1, you click Primatial Pummel. Hopefully I pronounced that right. If you press this, S2, then these skills will go on cooldown like a link skill. And then he will gain 1 purge. Now, next time he clicks the skill, since his purge is already at level 1, when you click this, it will activate another one of these at random. So you might get this and this. And then on the third time you cast it, you will get the effects of all 3. Now, this skill has a 6-turn cooldown, which might go down to 5 turns once you level him up. Check the wiki for that. And then it also is cut by 2 turns on charge attack. So it has a relatively low cooldown, so you'll be able to get the effects of all 3 relatively early. Now, each of these does their own special thing, but also gives him a unique buff, which is pretty much very similar to the buff you get when you click the skill as well. So for example, this one does some skill damage, raises his triple attack, and gives him 1-time echo, sort of like the buff you get when you click the skill. But there's a different activation, right? This one happens at the end of the turn. This one happens when the foe does a special attack and it's a dispel. And then this one happens whenever you charge attack, right? And each of these gives this unique buff, which lasts for 3 turns. His second passive basically says that when you have a certain amount of those buffs, you get attack, skill damage, and damage cap. If you have 1 of those unique buffs, then you get attack. If you have 2, you have amplify skill damage. And if you have 3, you have a damage cap. So overall, Nectar is looking to be a pretty solid character for full auto. I think he'll also be useful in Guild War full autos too, because you'll have time to ramp him up essentially to his full power. And also this skill here, which auto activates on enemy special attack and it's a dispel, is particularly useful in places like Guild War. Outside of that, you can probably use him in most other FAs as well. We'll have to see how he performs like numbers wise once people actually test it. But for now, on paper, he looks like a really solid full auto character, and looks like a fun one too at that, because you get to just click a bunch of skill damage. All right, let's move on to definitely the star of the banner, Orologia. So let's talk about the character first. There's a lot of things to cover with this character's kit. Firstly, this is the first time we're ever getting a character that you can switch genders or sex, right? So to do that, once you attain the character, you can go to their character details screen and you can click this change button and you'll be able to swap between male and female Orologia, right? This also changes your home screen background, and also it will change their Fate episode. The Orologia that you get in the Fate episode will match the gender that you have currently set. So if you're Jita, you'll get female Orologia, and if you're Gran, you will get male Orologia in the Fate episodes. All right, so there's a lot of things to break down in Orologia's kit. And I think the best way to do this is, since I happen to get very lucky and get the character, is to go into a trial battle. So let's go through her skills one by one. So firstly, she has her first skill, this one here, Mystica's Candor. Whenever you click this, it gives a buff to all allies, but this buff is quite unique because what it gives your team depends on Orologia's, I forget what it's called, causal intervention stacks, right? So you'll see that when I click the skill, we get the skill itself, the buff, but we also got this icon right over here. This is her causal intervention stacks, and basically she gets effects based on causal intervention. Boost to attack deals triple attacks deal bonus dark damage and bonus dodge rate, max of 4 and can't be removed. So this buff is gained whenever Orologia clicks her yellow bordered skill, so that's S1 and S3. So you'll see that when I click S3, that this number will go up to 2, like so, right? So on turn 1, you'll get immediately 2 stacks, which means that this particular buff here will give you boost to dark attack, and boost to critical hit rate. So since you have 2 stacks, you get the first 2 bonuses there, which is applied to the whole party. So you can see that Jita here has this buff as well. This buff is unremovable and it lasts 5 turns. However, the duration can be extended through the charge attack. As you can see here, extend all allies Mysticus Candor effect duration by 1 turn. So that's how this particular skill works. The more stacks you have, the better the buff becomes. And by the way, this buff is dynamic. So if Orologia gains a stack during the turn after you've clicked it, you will get the updated buff effect. It doesn't snapshot or anything at the start of it. So you don't have to get the stacks first before you click this. You can click it in any order. It will update in real time. All right. And then her second skill is quite simple. It's a dark damage nuke, which does hit to attack, stackable, and removes 1 buff. Very useful. Now, the special thing about this particular skill is that if Orologia has this particular buff here from her S1, when MC auto attacks, it will auto activate. So if I click attack here, you'll see that Orologia does that skill nuke after MC's auto attacks. So that's something really, really nice. Basically, it's a very easily accessible dispel at your disposal, right? So in places like Guild War or even in things like Lumi M3 full autos, that can be quite nice because those are raids where you have to dispel quite often. All right, and then let's talk about her third skill. So her third skill here really ties in together her wedge of time and causality sort of lore and powers. And essentially, it will give a 1-turn cut to Dark Allies' skill cooldowns. So when you click it, it will reduce all your cooldowns by 1 on everybody. So it's a really, really nice utility skill for that. So if I click this, you'll see that this normally has a cooldown of 10, but when I click this, it goes down to 9. So this will apply to your entire party. So ideally, you want to click it after everybody's skills so you can get it off cooldown a little bit faster. But in full auto, it is a yellow button, so it will be clicked before your red and blue buttons, so keep that in mind. On top of this skill will also boost your allies' attack and defense. The numbers for this aren't quite out yet, but it is dispellable, so that is notable, but it's still quite a nice bonus. Now, this skill here is actually quite unique as well, because once you hit Causal Intervention 4, the skill will actually change. So Causal Intervention, once again, is the purple buff that she gets whenever she clicks yellow skills. So when I click this, we will get 1 stack there, another one here. And then just for this demonstration, I'll use Kitten to get it off immediately. I don't recommend doing this in a real situation, by the way. But anyways, I click this, we get 3 stacks, and then finally I click it once more, and then we get 4 stacks. Now you can see that this icon has changed. It's a completely new skill. Now this one here is special because it's one of these selectable skills, and each one does something different. The first one is it ends cooldown for another Dark Ally, so not Orologia herself. It has to be somebody else, and they can use their skills twice in a turn. So this is very, very powerful for any omens in endgame raids where you need to do maybe a lot of debuffs, or you have to just click a lot of skills, things like that. This sort of skill will be really useful for omens like that. And then following on from that theme, we have triple strike and boost to triple attack, which is really useful for hit omens or triple attack omens. And then finally, this one here gives you instant CA and CA reactivation to somebody else. So really good for charge attack related omens. So this skill here, it is a one-time only skill. So you can see that here, you can't recast. So you only get it one time in the entire raid. But it's pretty much a clear whatever omen you want sort of skill, right? So for that reason, it can be quite useful in those endgame raids. It is a selectable skill, however, so you cannot full auto it, so keep that in mind. So for example, if I click this and cooldown, actually I'll click this one, give this to MC, you have this cool animation, and then MC gets those effects there. And then if you have her S1 active, for example, then she will auto nuke 3 times. Which is sort of fun. Right, okay, now, once you use this skill, you cannot recast, like I mentioned, and that includes the other versions of the skill as well. You can see that it's locked. Just because I use the red one doesn't mean I get to use the blue one or the other one. You only get to use one of those 3 once. Now, at this point, you might be asking, oh, that means you lose access to her original S3. And the answer to that is actually no, because if you read her second passive here, you'll see that once your causal intervention level is 4, every 5 turns, she will activate her original S3, the one that was there before. So let's just take some turns here. Turn 2. I'll just refresh past these. Turn 3. And then turn 4. And then here on turn 5, you'll see at the end of the turn, she will auto-activate her 3rd skill. Right there. You can see everybody's attack and defense went up, and it cut the cooldowns by 1 turn. So you don't lose access to her 3rd skill just because you've reached 4 stacks. It will auto cast every 5 turns. Alright, and then one final thing about her kit. In exchange for all this power, Orologia has a lower max HP and debuff resistance compared to regular characters. And finally, she also has this unique buff that she starts with, which says when an ally is almost knocked down at the end of the turn, so when they're in red HP range, set Dark allies' HP to full, remove all debuffs, and boost to defense. The wording here, since it says set Dark allies' HP to full, means that it bypasses debuffs like Zombify. So even if your team is zombied, your HP will be set to the maximum. It will remove all debuffs, which also includes friendly debuffs like Lich, so do keep that in mind. And it will boost your defense, so you get a permanent defense boost after this procs. So overall, very nice, and it will be quite useful for difficult full autos or difficult raids where something like this can really help out your sustain. Overall, Orologia is looking to be a really solid character for full autos and harder content. I don't think they will find a use in burst teams at the moment, but as mentioned, full auto, especially in Guild Ball with those dispels, I think we will probably see that. Alright, let's talk about the weapon they come with. So, Orologia's weapon, Causality Driver, is a katana, which is significant by the way, I'll get to that. And it is the Exalto weapon for Dark. It boosts your Dark Hades related weapon skills by 30%, which stacks up to 90, so 3 copies. And then it gives Small Fandango, which is attack and triple attack, and finally it gives Death Strike, which is Echo. So this weapon here is very similar to Zeta's recruitment weapon Overrider. The only difference is that this second skill is slightly different because Overrider gives crit, while this one doesn't, but otherwise they are almost identical. So if you're curious how Hades grids will look, I highly recommend checking out the Agni Advanced Grids page, because aside from this small difference in this weapon, pretty much the rest of the grid looks exactly the same. Now, I mentioned that Causality Driver being a katana is quite significant, and it's because of Eternal Signature's first weapon mod right here, which states that when at least 4 weapons of the same weapon group are equipped, you get all these bonuses. So, Orologia's recruit weapon, Causality Driver, being a katana means that if you have 3 of these in your grid, which is ideal for a lot of burst situations, the 4th katana in your grid is a weapon that you equip all the time, which is, of course, your Dark Opus. So that is a really easy way to fulfill the requirements of Eternal Signature. So with Guild Ball coming up next week, we are bound to see a bunch of meta setups use this particular weapons, mostly at 2 or 3 copies, ideally 3 copies for sure. As mentioned earlier, do check out the Agni Advanced Grids page and the Hades grid page once it updates. But seeing as Primal Fire's grid is pretty much exactly the same weapons as Hades now, you can expect those grids to be pretty much identical with the addition of maybe a couple unique pieces here and there. Now, onto my assessment of the banner. Should you spark? Now, I know it's gonna sound really hypocritical from me because you guys know I got Orologia and you can see that I've already pulled, but objectively speaking, unless you are an invested Hades Primal Dark player, it is not a good decision to spark here. Hear me out. Orologia is a grand character, which means that they are always sparkable on Flash Gala. So they will always be here no matter what time of year it is, as long as it is a Flash Gala, right? Which means with summer coming up at the end of this month, and summer lasts from the end of June all the way till August Flash, it means that Orologia will be there for July Flash and August Flash. So you have the opportunity to pick the character up there. And even if you don't get it in summer, it means that you can get it somewhere down the line, maybe during Halloween, maybe during Christmas, maybe during Roulette. For that reason, I don't recommend pulling this banner if you are not an invested Hades Primal player. Now, if you are, this banner is quite decent because this is a weapon you want multiple copies of. As mentioned previously, you want up to 3 copies of this weapon. So if you really want to take advantage of the rate up, this banner is a decent spot to spark. But for 90% of players, I don't think you should pull for Orologia here. You should probably wait. It is more wise to wait. I make unwise decisions sometimes because in this case, I really like Orologia. I've already ringed the character as well. But yeah, if you're pulling for meta reasons, but you're not a Hades player, I do recommend waiting because seasonal banners and seasonal characters are much, much harder to acquire. So it is, in general, better to wait in that case. So with that out of the way, if you guys are pulling, I wish you the best of luck. I hope you get as many Orologia copies as you need. And if you're holding, stay strong. I know it's hard, especially on a banner like this with a character like Orologia who's so cool. It's really hard to wait, and obviously I succumbed to my temptation. But if you don't have a spark, you're not guaranteed the character. And if you're spending a spark here, you are almost certainly giving one up for summer as well. We already have a reveal of at least one of the summer characters. Check Granblue EN Twitter for that if you're not aware. And yeah, there's probably going to be a lot of cool characters coming up just like starting on the next banner. So I do recommend waiting if at all possible. All right, anyways, that's enough from me. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. There is a surprise ticket here. I might not do a video for this one. I will see what's changed, but since this surprise ticket came out so soon after the last one, I don't think actually much has changed. So check out the last surprise ticket video at the moment if you're curious. I think if there's enough updates, I'll make a new one, but for now, assume no video. We'll see. Anyways, catch you guys later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.